Good morning, St. Francis, and good morning, people of God. It is Monday, the 26th day of August, 2024, Monday of the 21st week of the year, the 21st week in Ordinary Time. Today, on the 26th day of August, it is less than 4 months until Christmas Day, so something to think about in case you haven't been thinking about those things. As we move towards the conclusion of summer, Labor Day is this coming weekend, and we move into fall. Again, Christmas is not far behind that, so just thinking that, putting all of that together, hopefully getting lists and things like that together, if that is your thing, to be able to celebrate. But it's on its way. It's on its way. So on this Monday of the 21st week of the year, we leave the Old Testament. We leave the Old Testament, we leave the prophets, and now we move into the New Testament, specifically the letters of St. Paul, and we come to basically what is perhaps one of the first, the earliest, if not the first, letter that Paul writes. And this is to the church at Thessalonica, one of the cities on the Aegean Sea, on the Greek coast. And there are two that he writes to the Thessalonians. We begin with the second one because it's a little bit... It's a little bit more open to exhortation than it is to basically situations that Paul describes in the first letter. So the second letter just opens with a greeting and then an encouragement that the church in Thessalonica continue to grow and continue to prosper. What's going on there? Well, it seems as though, again, in Paul's missionary journeys, he first arrives in Philippi, again, the city on the coast of the Aegean Sea. And he will write a letter to the Philippians, but then he moves from there to Thessalonica, and it is there that he's kind of met with a very strong Jewish community, as well as a non-Jewish community that are there, who find, again, his preaching offensive and his preaching bothersome, and so they kind of try to run him out of town. And here's where he has kind of parted ways with Barnabas, I believe it is, who was his first companion in his missionary journeys, and now he is with Silvanus. And so both of them have to kind of flee Thessalonica and to Athens, and that's kind of where the journeys will continue and things like that. But in between all of that, he has not abandoned the Christians, in Thessalonica. Again, as they begin to understand themselves as Christians, they may have just been Jewish residents there, but it could have also been a couple of Greek non-Jewish residents who were part of this early community. And again, there is a kind of a persecution, because the thing is also that's happening at this time in history is that there are a lot of wandering, itinerant preachers kind of preaching all kinds of beliefs, maybe not religious systems, but all kinds of beliefs in different gods or different understandings of the gods and things like that. And this is where Roman religion, Greco-Roman religion, is kind of undergoing, some kind of, it's not a demise, but it's a lessening of its power. Its rituals become more superstitious than they become anything that is building up any kind of character, understanding, or view of the world. And not that really that was kind of ever part of Greco-Roman religion. Generally, what you could get is what you could get from a god or a goddess. But now now you have a whole bunch of people basically saying that this is not true and this is true, and then in comes Paul with this message of a risen Christ, and people begin to just think it's one more message like this and want to basically drown it out so that their message succeeds. So this is how it's all going around, and so this letter to the Thessalonians, two letters, so that it both helps them understand what it is that they believe, but then seeks to encourage them as they continue to move forward in their faith. And again, something that's kind of interesting for us to consider sometimes too, because where all kinds of different messages are being promoted, even within our own church, about what it means to believe and how to believe and these kinds of things like that. What is that which is going to give us life? What is that's going to help our lives be directed in a way that allows us to be also life-giving? That is what is important. That is what we need to focus upon. In Matthew's Gospel, we move into the great section of the great woes to the Pharisees, to Jewish leadership. And how they have failed again and again and again to offer their people some kind of guidance, that they keep basically looking at earthly situations only, and earthly contexts only. And by earthly context, it means those things that are best for the Pharisees and the scribes become those things that people must most respect, and not necessarily the things of God or the things that are going to allow their lives, again, to become fuller and happier and more filled with life. And so so you have this sense in which Jesus says that they are to that the Pharisees encourage the people to swear by the gold of the temple, because that shows prosperity and that shows God's favor because of prosperity. And Jesus's whole message in Matthew is basically saying God is, the gospel is not a prosperity thing. It doesn't mean that God likes you better because you're rich, and in fact you may have more to deal with because you have gold and riches. And so this whole understanding of flipping what it means to be part of a system, a religious system, and to have leaders within this religious system, Jesus begins to challenge. Again, these Pharisees are so caught up with themselves. Leadership is so caught up with itself and preserving itself that it has lost sight of its mission. And more importantly, it has lost sight of the people in its care. That can be true of any time, any place, and even within our own church today, we've had many situations in which leadership was more caring and more concerned with its own style and its own image and its own whatever it is, that it basically permitted a lot of horrible things to happen, and sometimes continues, to do that, to be brought, to a challenge, brought to a realization of what is important and what matters in our relationship with God is what we are about, not preserving ourselves or influence or our fame or whatever it is. It's about being servants and trying to serve as best we can to the people in our care. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.